And I needed a job. Desperately. Let me be very clear.
Yeah.
And I wasn't willing to sacrifice myself.
Yeah.
To just have a job.
Right.
I didn't want to just have a job. I wanted to build something that had meaning and purpose for me.
Right.
Because I know that's what's going to get me to where I want to go,
Mm-hmm.
which is a space where, you know, I have a community, I have soulmate partnerships
Mm-hmm.
with, you know, a romantic partner, with friendships, with business. Like, I wanted that.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
in order to do that, I had to say no.
So feel me when I bring it, sing it loud. I'm from the loop and I'm proud. Run a mile for the cause, I'm right.
Hi guys, it's your girl Nechama, your favorite Jew from the Lou. Welcome back to my podcast. And today I am so excited and I've been waiting so long for this particular guest. I have Angela. Welcome.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
This is just so great. Like, honestly, from the moment that I saw you at Babes in Business, you were wearing your leopard print and it was like this suit, but it was blue if I remember correctly. And it was so fierce and confident and I just loved it.
Thank you.
You stood out to me. And then we just connected afterwards. I wanted you on as a guest. You were so kind and agreed to meet me for coffee beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so much alignment in who we are as people. I'm just excited. This is going to be great.
I'm really excited too. I'm really, you know, when you were talking at the networking event, immediately I was like, I have to talk to her. Because I knew like there was something there.
Yeah.
And I'm, you know, a big believer in that, and I'm excited.
A soul knows a soul.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think what I really think the main thing that we're really very much in alignment in where we are in our lives, we're both very much still in our planting season because we have these huge dreams and we're taking steps towards them. But we're both authentically ourselves right now. And I think when you are doing that, even if you're not at your end game of where you want to be, that energy is magnetic and it attracts your people to you. So it made sense.
Yes, total sense.
Yeah. So if you could talk to us just a little bit about you, because you wear a lot of hats. And like, I totally get it because I have ADD. So it's like, it's just that you're so passionate about life. And what's so cool about everything that you do, which I'll let you go into more, is that I feel like they all connect. They all fall under that umbrella of community and helping people. So I'll let you take the floor.
Yeah, okay, so what is there to say? Yeah, to your point, I wear a lot of hats. So I own Arcana Collaborative. By trade, I'm a licensed master social worker, which, long story short, I'm a therapist. And I also am a certified master life coach. I do wellness events, and I'm also in process right now of getting my yoga teacher certification, which will be done in like a month and a half, which is really exciting.
You know, by the time this is live, you'll probably be certified.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the plan. End of March is when it's happening.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And my big area of passion is mental health and like being connected, mind, body, spirit. And so with that, it just made sense to integrate everything.
Yeah.
Because it's something I believe in personally, and it's been my work throughout many years now.
Yeah. Totally.
You know, I started Arcana Collaborative in 2013, at the end of 2013. And this was after over a decade in the nonprofit sector, specifically really honing in on mental health in our communities. And from that, I had an opportunity to go to a startup, and unfortunately the startup didn't start up. And it gave me this really unique opportunity to go and do my own thing. And there were a lot of challenges and struggles within that process. I know I'm kind of on the other side of it now, so it sounds really like light and like, oh yeah, and I just went and started my own business. But it took a lot of deep soul digging and really me looking at what do I want and need. And from that, Arcana Collaborative was born.
Yeah.
And you know, what I realized what I wanted needed was community, and I wanted an opportunity to serve people still in regards to their mental health, but in particular, helping them feel most authentically themselves and be within their own alignment, and to go out into the world being better versions of themselves than they were yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's how it all started, and that's where we are.
And there's 2 more things that you didn't mention.
What else did I not mention? Okay, what else?
You have a podcast.
I do have a podcast. Yes, the podcast.
So good. I binged it. I didn't binge it just to be like, oh, I'm going to listen to everything. Like, I legitimately, okay, full disclosure.
Sure.
When someone tells me they have a podcast,
Mhm.
it's market research for me, because I always feel like there's something I can learn from other podcast hosts, right? The way they talk to the guests, the questions they ask. Are they more of the talker the entire time? Are they more of a listener? Like, all that energy. And also there's like really creative things that podcasters do too. Like, is there a theme question they always ask, right? Things like that. So you told me you had one, and I knew you were coming on, and I really liked you. So I was like, I'm going to support, I'm going to listen. But it was really more from like a supportive thing to start. But then I genuinely actually love your podcast.
Thank you.
Like, I am so excited for you to continue it, because I'm literally waiting.
Yes. So I didn't bring it up because it's been on pause.
Right.
But 2025, I am bringing it back.
Mhm.
I'm kind of reassessing how I'm going to do it. So my podcast is called Lean In and Listen, which is very much aligned with who I am, my own journey, and also my business.
Yeah.
And through the process of leaning in and listening, I really was able to get to this space of wanting to share more of my personal story. And so my podcast really was an opportunity for me to just share a little bit about like my journey, and also my beliefs of just like life and relationships and like taking care of yourself and the challenges that we face as human beings. And what we need. And so I did start it, and then I had some like big life things happening, and I needed to take a pause.
Right.
And, you know, I think that is also something I talk about within leaning in and listening, is listening to yourself. And at that time, it was just, I needed to rest. I needed to like go inward a little bit and analyze how I was feeling, what I needed, you know, who I needed around me.
Yeah.
And through that, I have kind of come to this realization that I really do love my podcast. I want to bring it back. I've, you know, heard a lot of amazing feedback from it, which has been wonderful. Yeah, validating and wonderful. And I think too, it wasn't expected. It was just an opportunity for me to like get some things off my chest, honestly, and do some things that like other people had seen within me. And it was an opportunity to really just embrace being me.
Yeah.
And it's something that I really love to do. It's not like work for me.
No. Yeah, it's totally the opposite.
Yeah.
As a therapist, you don't get to share on a deep emotional level. All the, my friend on the past podcast, the one that's going to be released tomorrow, actually,
Oh, exciting.
is she just has to remind herself constantly, especially as an ADHD thing. A lot of times during conversation, we tend to interrupt, not because we're trying to be rude, but just because like the way we connect is shared stories. Like, oh my gosh, I align with you. That totally resonates with me. And then here's what happened to me. And it sometimes could come across as like taking over, but it's totally not what you mean to do. But as a therapist or a psychologist, you have to really lean back, not lean in, you know, because it's about them, and there has to be that professional separation.
Yeah, and it's really an interesting balance, and something that I have had an interesting time navigating, because I also am an ADHD queen. And maybe you could tell that by just all the things that I'm doing. But it's given me this opportunity to truly lean in. And that was part of my theme for 2024, was to lean in and listen to God, the universe, myself, my intuition, following my heart, doing the things that felt in connection with who I am now, because I today feel more authentically myself than I've ever felt.
That's awesome.
And that has had challenges,
Yeah.
you know, because sometimes when you step into that space, you lose things too. And there's grief that's associated with that. And it's a process, like everything in life. to heal and to always come back to who you are and, listening to what you know inherently to be true.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think part of the reason why you could feel that pain is because identity is something that you can attain from society, from your family, from the social structures that you were surrounded with, the community that you were raised in. And so there is really painful separating because there was a time when that identity meant something to you and you were trying to be that, what do they say, is it a square peg in a round hole?
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, I think about that sometimes even within, I'm doing it again with the story thing, but doing it with the way I was raised like as an Orthodox Jew and like, there's so much beauty in Judaism and I have so much respect for the Orthodox community. It just doesn't align with me currently. And so what's beautiful to me is what I keep and everything else is a journey. That doesn't mean it's not painful for me to sometimes be around the Orthodox community simply because I remember wanting all the things that they wanted. I remember wanting to be part of that community and it feels painful for me. Like the synagogue that I grew up going to, I don't feel comfortable in there anymore. Even though it's all my friends and family, people who knew me forever, I don't feel comfortable there anymore because it's not who I am. I've changed and it reminds me, I almost feel like I'm being pulled back into that old identity, right? So I think I can agree with you on that, where it could be painful, but it feels really freeing and beautiful to like step into who you are,
Yeah, there's a peace and a calm that comes with
the calm. Oh, the calm is so gorgeous. That book that we're reading for your, she also has a book.
Yes, at my book club, yes.
Well, I mean, I think that's part of our Arcana Collaborative, right?
Yes.
You have all these events that are, first of all, community-based, which I love because like-minded events is so much fun because then you meet your tribe,
Yes.
right? But the book club, I haven't attended yet, but the book that you chose, The Self-Love Experiment, I'm in the middle of it right now. It's so good. And it talks about how like inner happiness is like when you feel inner peace.
Yeah.
That's like authentically it. The peace is freeing.
It is totally freeing. And it's something that when I look back at my own like personal life journey, it's something I've always wanted and been seeking and I'm creating it. And I've learned how to navigate the challenges by staying true to who I am.
Yeah.
And by always keeping at the forefront that I want peace and calm. Like that is what is important to me. And, part of that is like the constant like value assessment that I do within my internal dialogue. I talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people or situations or communities at certain times are in alignment and it makes sense and it's there for a purpose. And when you are in a space of always seeking that calm and the peace, you sometimes then will find that you outgrow certain people, places, and things. And that's hard and also really rewarding when you get to a place of acceptance of that.
I think it was Alex Hormozy who talks about how when you're growing and evolving, whether it's on a personal level, a fitness level, business, there comes a time when you outgrow the people, the community, the places, and there's a loneliness period.
Yeah.
And I think that is what makes people afraid to step out because loneliness is hard. And it's an epidemic, and we do everything we can to numb that loneliness, whether it's staying in places that we don't belong or tapping into like external things like drugs or alcohol, or even just the smaller addictions like shopping and really good food. We all have our vices.
Yeah.
And but I love your Lean In and Listen podcast because it's just you. I've never had a solo podcast episode. I think I did my intro video, which was like 5 minutes. I'm like, I could talk for 5-10 minutes, no problem. It is difficult to talk for that long. I didn't realize. And like yours are long format and they run so smoothly. They're super intriguing. The conversations are great. I feel like I'm listening to like a voice note from my best friend about their deepest thoughts.
That is what I wanted.
And that's exactly what I felt. And you also do those journal prompts at the end. Love.
Thank you.
Because journaling's hard, but if I have a prompt, I can do it.
Yeah.
You know?
It's something that I've really clinged to within my own personal journey. I've had a lot of challenges in life, and I've gone through various phases of trying to always figure out, like, who am I today versus who I was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And journaling has been a consistent, and it's been something that I've talked on in many other spaces about that I didn't always like.
Yeah.
It wasn't something I enjoyed because it was really hard for me to sometimes sit with myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had many life experiences in which I had to do a lot of protecting of others and holding secrets. And it's interesting, based on like what I do for work, that there is a part of that exists, but the podcast and the journaling allowed me to release some of those.
Yeah.
And to be able to really provide something that I have found to be valuable to other people. And the journal prompts are something that like everyone who has listened to the podcast talks about. Like, I really enjoy the process of self-reflection. It is not something I always enjoyed. And there are many ways to do that. Whether it's journaling from a traditional like pen and paper modality, or like I'm also a big on bringing out the Notes app and hitting that microphone and talking to yourself, because I truly think getting out some of that internal dialogue that plays within our heads can really help us heal.
Yeah. And I love the voice note thing as well, because I think sometimes we don't, even if we have friends and family and community, we don't feel like we want to burden them, but we do need to let it out. And so having almost that like mock phone call, that mock voice note where you could send it out and listen to it, it kind of gives us clarity while releasing it off your chest. And I love how, even though I totally get it, like you put so much thought and care into that podcast, and it makes sense that you're going to do it when you're ready. The reason why I wanted to like promote it is because even though it's only 6 episodes, like those 6 episodes, like you must listen. Like it's just worth it just for those 6 episodes. Even if you were to never pick it up again, there's so much value in just those 6 episodes.
Thank you.
And I love how like you still do it in your other Arcana Collaborative events.
Yeah.
Like the Mocktails of Mindfulness. It's like basically a live podcast where you do that.
Yeah. The book club is kind of similar too.
I don't know yet, but I would imagine it was. Like even just doing the Mocktails of Mindfulness on like, I'm in like any event that you do, I'm like, as long as I am available, I will be going to, because they're so valuable.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really loved it. I've been actually implementing one of the exercises we did at the one in January, where you asked if you could only have one word for the year. That you don't even know the revolution you started. Because I'm like, January is so stressful. Everyone's doing vision boards. Everyone's doing their mantras and all their resolutions. And they're so over the top. And we all have these big dreams, which is gorgeous. But like, let's be real, as fellow entrepreneur, we know this. Having a dream is one thing, figuring that out. Then you have to reverse engineer it and commit, even when it feels like everything's failing and you have to keep going. That's hard. And that's true in any area of your life. So boiling it down to just one word was so powerful. And I remember when you said, I'm like, one word, forget about it. Like, there's no way. And then like 2 seconds later, I knew it was surrender. That was my word for the year. And because and once you get rid of like all the bullshit and you just cut through,
Yeah. Well, we are the experts in our own lives.
Yeah, but sometimes there's so much fluff. And I really appreciated that like direct question.
I like to cut through the fluff when I can. And I'm not always good at it. Like, I own that. Like, there are times where, I do enjoy some fluff here and there.
We are humans.
We are.
All, right? But it's so powerful to be able to do that. What was your word again?
Alignment.
Alignment. Okay.
Yeah, I think, 2024 was this kind of theme of leaning in and listening and being truly connected to myself, and like authenticity was my word last year, was like authenticity. Where this year it's a kind of a bridge word, which is the alignment piece, because I think in order for me to be my most authentic self, I have to be in alignment.
Yeah.
And in order for me to feel connected and comfortable to lean in and listen to myself and God and the universe, I have to be within alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And alignment looks different for everybody.
Yes, it does.
But I know instinctually what my alignment is. Like, I know when it's a yes and when it's a no, if I just listen to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, I'm a big believer of, and I know there's a lot of schools of thought around this, that, you know, following your heart and intuition for some people doesn't resonate.
No, it doesn't.
But for me, I view that as a divine connection.
Me too.
To what is outside of me.
Mm-hmm.
And that looks different for everybody too, right? Like, everybody has their outside belief systems, whether it's religious based or spiritual based. And for me, I grew up Roman Catholic, and it was never a religion in which I resonated with. I don't resonate with religion. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but I do very much resonate with faith and spirituality.
Yes, me too.
And it's something that I am being in alignment, becoming more comfortable talking about with people, because I think there's a lot of mixed feelings about spirituality and what it actually means.
Is it woo-woo?
Yes, and I'm woo-woo, and I own that.
Yeah.
But my woo-woo is directly connected.
Mm-hmm. It's intentional woo-woo.
Yes.
You're not running through the streets naked,
No.
smoking weed, and like,
No.
I think that's what people associate woo-woo with. Just like,
and if that is your version of woo-woo, listen, I'm okay with it. You need to do you.
right.
But for me, there's not like this right and wrong concept of what connects you to your faith and spirituality. At the core of it, for me, it's how I treat myself and how I treat other people.
Yeah.
And community is a big part of that for me.
Yeah.
And knowing that decisions I make on a daily basis don't just affect me. They affect the people that love and care about me, the people that I may not know, but are going to be impacted by decisions that I make.
Mm-hmm.
And that is my connection to my faith and my spirituality, is like being conscious of that.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean always making the right quote unquote decisions, but being conscious and self-aware that I play a role.
Yeah. And you're a leader in that role as well, because you figured out what aligns with you, which in and of itself is a huge feat.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that you also curate these spaces for community of like-minded souls is really powerful, because there's a lot of people who feel this way and maybe feel alone and maybe haven't connected with people who are like-minded. Mm-hmm. So by curating these mocktails and mindfulness events, or the book clubs, or I don't even know some of the other events that are upcoming and I'll hear about, I'm sure. But they're so great. It just feels so nice to have community, because I think that is something beautiful that religion does have.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And it could be used for good and bad. We've all known that. But when it's used for good, like I know, like I could speak on the Orthodox Jewish community, tight. Mm-hmm. Really helpful, like in terms of everyone supporting each other with business. I mean, like even my friend and I were talking about like the Jewish schools that we go to. Majority of the teachers are Jewish. They're all part of the community. We're babysitting our teachers' kids. So we're at our teachers' houses. I remember I had a book club in middle school. We went to my teacher's house and we made hot cocoa, which is so wholesome and cute. Would that ever happen in a public school? Especially nowadays? Mm-hmm. Probably not. That would probably be frowned upon and be super inappropriate. Mm-hmm. So it's so different, you know?
It is so different. I think it's a process trying to figure out what community looks like for you. And, you brought up a point a minute ago just about when you're on these journeys, like it can feel lonely. Mm-hmm. And I will openly admit, like a lot of my life has felt lonely.
Yeah.
I have always kind of been the square peg in a round hole, or the black sheep.
Yeah, out of the box.
Yeah, out of the box. And I've been there have been times where I have really tried so hard, desperately, to fit. And when I look back at those times, it was not me.
Yeah.
You know, there were elements of me, and I was trying really, really hard to show up as me.
You probably put on a good show too.
Yeah.
To the point where people get shocked when they're like, wait, you weren't happy?
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And that's like,
that's a whole
other can of worms of trauma response and not feeling validated or supported. And through that process, though, and getting here now, a lot of what I am wanting to create and am building is an opportunity for people that have felt those feelings of seeking that community or having a shared understanding that there is a direct connection between us all somehow.
I believe that.
And that we, as a collective whole, can learn from each other. And we can grow with each other if we are willing to do that.
Right. Right.
And don't get too stuck in like systematic pressures and black and white thinking.
Totally. And one of the reasons why I did this podcast and I talk to everybody and I want to hear their stories and I'm so intrigued is that connection is so important for me. And I wanted to create a safe space where no matter what your values are or what your religion or lack thereof was, we can just talk. And like really talk and have meaningful conversations about it with coming from a place of curiosity. Because there's a difference, I think, listening to internalize and listening to understand. And I think a lot of people, especially when they don't feel grounded in their own core beliefs, are really afraid to listen to people who are different. Because like, oh, God forbid, I'm just using a really basic example because it's relevant to nowadays, Republican, Democrat, God forbid, if I'm a Republican and I'm listening to a Democrat, I might become a Democrat if I listen to you. That's not true. Wouldn't it be better for us to just share our values and then at the end of the day, I understand you a little better. And maybe I might change and maybe I don't. But regardless, I've expanded myself. I've become a bigger and better version of me. And there's so much power in like owning your story, but there's also so much power in sharing your story.
Yeah. I think too, like being able to assess in like that example, right? Like what aligns and what doesn't. And knowing that if there isn't alignment, it's okay to let it go.
Yeah.
And I think that is hard in itself. It's scary because sometimes when you let it go, that means relationship changes and
your own identity
shifts. And I think too, there's always that fear that exists for many of us where it's like, what are people going to think?
Oh yeah.
And that's something that I personally have battled. And it's something that even within my like therapeutic work and coaching work, I work with people on. And it's also something that is always present for me and something that I'm always working on in my own individual therapy and coaching work.
Yeah.
Because for some of us, outside perceptions can integrate into who we are, and then we have to pick that apart and unlearn.
You literally just figured me out in like 2 seconds. I didn't have the words to articulate it, but that's exactly what happened to me. People always want to know, a lot of times people have this theory that if you grew up religious and then you stop being as religious, something traumatic must have happened to you. I don't really think anything particularly, not that I didn't have challenges, but there wasn't like something traumatic where I can be like, this was the moment that I knew I could never be religious again, you know? It was more about the small, what's the word for it? Just the pressures from the community, from the teachers, from the family. Some self-imposed, some imposed culturally, were put on me, and then I had this identity that really wasn't my own. But you're so young, you don't get a chance to do it. And then also, I love what you said about like, I feel so much comfort in hearing that you're on the other side of taking that leap on you in your career, because I just recently did it last year. So I'm right in the beginning stages of it where there's a lot of questioning and a lot of doubt. But like, especially babes in business, probably one of the best things I ever discovered for this stage of my life, to hear women who are like either right where I'm at or 15 years down the line and hear all the different pros and cons. That first one, when everyone was going around and they were saying like, your people will find you.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, all of us may be in different industries, but each of those industries are so saturated.
Mm-hmm.
It could feel like, who am I? Do I make a difference? Am I wasting my time? But you're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's such a unique opportunity. I think if you get stuck in the mindset of, well, everybody is also doing what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And you get into this like competitive
Comparison
space, or the comparison space, or the am I good enough space. It's a really slippery slope. But the thing that we often forget is like, you're you.
Yeah.
You could be doing the exact same thing as somebody else, but you're you.
Mm-hmm.
And your people will find you. And sometimes they're in it for the long haul. They're going to stay with you, and they're going to watch you grow, and they're going to be a part of every twist and turn. And then there's some people that are going to just be there temporarily. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
There's meaning behind all of that. Because in every connection, partnership, relationship you have, there's opportunity there to grow.
Yeah.
Whether that's through joy and peace and happiness, or strife and heartbreak and grief.
Yeah.
Because it's
true.
all interconnected.
So another shared connection that we have, and I'm so glad about, is Kabbalah and energy, and also now human design,
Mm-hmm.
which is also kind of all part of it
Yeah.
too, to be honest. It's not really so Kabbalah heavy, my human design, but it's more like energy,
Yes.
right? And I had heard about it because my Kabbalah teacher was on the interview of a podcast for the creator of my human design,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's why I heard about it, and of course everything he says, I'm like, okay, let's try it, why not? And then I just never did. And thanks to your encouragement, I finally did it yesterday. And it didn't tell me anything I didn't know, but it was so validating
Mm-hmm.
because you already are really grounded in that you know what aligns with you.
Yeah.
You would know when it's a yes, when it's a no, and it sounds like you make, hopefully most of the time, make decisions from an intuitive place.
Yeah.
But I think women, a lot of times, we do have, in Hebrew it's called a bina yisera.
Mm-hmm.
It's an emotional intelligence. It's something that men do not have.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they're not emotionally intelligent. It's just a special emotional
Yeah.
intelligence that women have that men can never attain.
A little extra oomph. if
A
you will.
little sparkle,
Yeah.
a little sprinkle from God, if you will. But part of that, I think, is that we can make decisions from our gut,
Yeah.
from our instinct, from our hearts.
Mhm.
Whereas men are more in their heads
Yes.
and they're more logical.
Yes.
And then that's the yin and the yang, that's the masculine, feminine, right? And I think that there are definitely women who maybe are a little bit more masculine in their
Sure.
thought process. And you also have men who maybe are more feminine in their
Yeah.
thought process. Which, if you want to go Kabbalistically, goes into a whole thing about souls and how some souls are female and male. And
Yes.
you could have a female soul and a male body, and that could be why. That's a whole conversation
Yes.
in and of itself. But to bring it back with my human design, so you were sure that you knew what I was.
Yeah.
You thought I was, what was it?
I thought you were a manifesting generator.
Right, and I'm just a manifester.
Yeah.
And then the way that I manifest is I'm a passive manifester.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an Aries. So I wasn't expecting that combination.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually really aligns with me because in my life, when I've tried to initiate and be that Aries and boldly go after what I want, I'm not really met with a lot of success.
Mm.
But when I'm in my authentic self and I'm operating from a place of joy and just believing and surrendering,
Mm-hmm.
then that's when things just are a magnet for me. I don't even have to work that hard for it. It's just an alignment.
Yeah.
And so it made a lot of sense to me.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting whether it's like religious practices or spiritual practices. Like I am somebody who likes to take a little bit of something from everything.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what gives me what I need to be in alignment. And I think practices like Kabbalah, which is really energy centered, and the process of human design, which is also very energy centered, just gives that, to your point, validation sometimes that you like need, that you are on track.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's also like a good reset and a reminder of maybe I'm not on track in this part, or maybe, you know, I can lean into this particular part of me more to feel aligned.
Yeah.
To your point, you know, if you're somebody who really is supposed to strive in passive manifesting, and you're out here thinking, I'm operating from an Aries brain, which is like very action oriented, the balance isn't there.
Right.
And it will cause this feeling of not being in alignment.
Right.
And I think even in my own, I'm a manifesting generator, which is part of why I thought, because we had so many similarities, I was like, I wonder if she's a manifesting generator. But I am somebody who has a lot of ideas. And that is very aligned with manifesting, mani-gens, as they call them.
Yeah.
And I am someone, when it comes to like my manifestation, it's not distinct. Like I can do whatever. And it's based on what I, in the moment, feel.
Yeah.
Which completely connects with who I am.
Totally.
Because one thing about me is like my intuition and my gut are strong. And when I actually fully listen to that, it all clicks.
It does. I'm learning to trust that, because you're right. It does make sense and it does click and it works better. But I think sometimes, going back to the society thing, people will tell you, well, how do you know yes, no, give it a chance, right? You know. Your body knows.
Yes.
You gotta trust it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely had that before, and it's really perfect because I always wondered how like me and my business partner worked, because like I'm an Aries, he's a Virgo. I'm big picture, I think, with my heart, and he's very like systematic.
Yes.
And like wants things done at a certain time, you know.
Yes, I've had some Virgos in my life too.
But like for me, it's like, let's say with social media, there are some people who are really into like the metrics and engagement, and these are the best times to post and whatnot, right? And I'm just like, I'm really excited about this piece. I'm gonna post it because it feels right, and the people who are meant to find it will find it. So I act out of my energy and my joy. And whoa, has that totally, I've seen my metrics from when I try to do it according to like an algorithm versus when I do it from my gut. I always see the difference.
Yeah, same. When I post things that just feel like authentically aligned with who I am, they always do better than the things that I'm like supposed to post.
Right.
And as I've been navigating social media in general, like it's something that I have internally really struggled with. I talk about it a little bit on my podcast. And I'm still working through pieces of that. I recognize now more than ever, you know, if I just show up as me, it'll work.
Yeah.
The right people will find me.
They will.
And that's what I mean by it works. It doesn't mean like how many people are following me or how many people are viewing certain things, but it's like the people that will connect with what I'm building and what I'm doing find me.
Right.
And when that happens, there's an uptick.
For sure. And you know what? When you're adding value, there's always, and it's authentic value, it just takes time. And I think we live in such a quick generation where we're so used to getting everything yesterday, right? Like we were talking about this at the last Mocktails of Mindfulness, where it's like Amazon Prime was 2 days and now they can do it in 1 day. So if I wait 2 days for something, I'm like mad. Because oh my God, now.
Yeah.
But like even the podcast. So I talked about this in previous episodes. Last year I I was on the hunt to get a boyfriend, and I was like, it's gonna happen. I'm gonna make it happen. Going into that forceful energy. Yeah. So I went on Bumble, and I talked to so many guys. I ran out of matches because I was saying yes, and then I would like drive to other like neighborhoods where there was like men who I thought I would want to meet. Not meeting them in real life because I didn't have the confidence for that, but I was just like, oh cool, this is a better selection of men than in the other neighborhood.
That's funny.
Oh, I did it like a job. Like I was I was only on it for a month and then I got a boyfriend. So like I was intense about it. But one of the guys that I didn't even date, we just talked to on the app because dating and getting off the app is hard enough. Mm-hmm. But you talk to a lot of people, and that was really my whole point. I wanted to just get used to talking to guys and like see what worked, see what didn't work, and just be playful with it. Yeah. And so what happened was he has a podcast, and that's what intrigued him about me, because I had put that up and coming podcaster, and I had done like one episode. Yeah. And he was like, oh, that's awesome. He's like, so what's like your schedule for how often you're posting? And I said, at this point, it was every other week. Mm-hmm. And he's like, that's really good. He's like, if you can, I would try to get to a point where you're posting once a week, because you're going to get rewarded in the algorithms much faster for that. Your videos will be promoted more. And he was saying how he and his friends just did it for fun. It was a passion project. 4 or 5 years in, it just blew up all of a sudden. And now he quit his corporate job so that he can do this full time because he's getting paid from it. Yeah. And it's not just him, it's his group of friends, and all of them were getting paid enough that they could just quit. Yeah. And I did more research, and I found like the average podcast, unless you're already someone of influence, takes 4 to 5 years of consistent work before it pops off. Yeah. You know? But I love what I do so much. It's such a passion project for me, and I get to meet so many cool people. So selfishly, this is really more like my diary of like, or my journal, if you will, of like people who really mean something to me, intrigue me. They made an impact in my life. I saw something in them, and I wanted to capture that because it's better than a picture. Yeah, I love that. You know? And like, I've had some people recently where they're like, well, if they want to be on the podcast, they're more focused on, oh, but is this a popular podcast? What are your numbers? What are your views? Do you have sponsors? Like things like that. And I'm like, have you watched my podcast? It's in my living room. Like, it's just chill. I'm just a girl with $50 bikes from Amazon.
And nothing is wrong with that.
And nothing is wrong with that because I'm doing the thing, and I will upgrade eventually. Yeah. Part of my vision for my coffee shop is I want a podcast room. I want to use it for me, selfishly, and also if I meet cool people, I'm like, let's go into the back. But I also want to help up and coming podcasters because I know how challenging this technology can be. Yes. Just when you think you figured it out, something fails.
Or something doesn't record, or...
That's happened to me.
It happened to me one time too.
I feel like, but here's the problem: when I have guests, that's such a Or like the video, something goes wrong with the video. Like there's so many factors to doing a podcast that I don't think people realize. It's a lot of work, and I love it, so it's worth it. Yes. Mr. Beast said, if you want to be a creator, you need to create 100 videos, and they're all going to suck. Yeah. And then by the 100th video, maybe then you'll be a creator. I love that. And then there was another speaker, it was like one of those old school speakers, like in like the 40s, right? And he was saying how everyone's goal should be to be a millionaire. Not to be a millionaire, but who you'll become to become a millionaire. So it's kind of like the same thing. Like I've seen myself evolve and change from episode 1 till now, you know?
Yeah. It's a cool process.
It's a very cool process.
And I think what we have in similarity is that usage of a podcast as a way to journal or diary dump, if you will. And I think that was, I know when I listened to the episode I listened to before I was talking to you about when you had talked about being on it, I was like, there's so much alignment here. Yeah. Because we have very similar style in that. Is that we're digging beyond the surface. And that's something for me at this phase of life is really important. When I think about energy and how I want to expel my energy and what kind of energy I want to take in, it is only in spaces that are going to allow me to really go out underneath the thing the surface level. And surface level stuff is okay. Don't not get me wrong.
Right.
Like there are times and places for that, but
you need to be able to.
I have to be able, because I've spent so much of my life under the surface. And it is important for me to be able to go deeper and be vulnerable. And it's something I take a lot of pride in, that I've worked really hard to get to a place of being vulnerable with other people outside of my therapist. And it is not how I was raised.
I have a challenge for you.
Sure.
Actually.
Sure.
Because I just heard this on a podcast yesterday, and I've been thinking about it, and you just sparked it in me. So words matter.
Yes, they're really, really important.
They're really important. So I'll say, I just thought of two things
Okay.
of like associated with that. One of them is the word vulnerable.
Yes.
It's something we use a lot.
Yes.
And I never saw anything wrong with it before. Obviously, the work you have to do for it is scary.
Yes.
But this guest that I listened to, I'm so sorry, I forgot their name, but it's the most recent episode from the School of Greatness with Lewis House.
Yeah.
Have you listened to it?
I have not listened to the most recent episode.
Anyways, he talks about, this is really specifically for men.
Yeah.
And he was saying the word vulnerable, he's like, when I think of it, the picture that it paints for me is like if you have a gunman that comes in, all the people at the bank are vulnerable, right? He's like, you're not quivering because you're sharing who you are and you're being and owning and being authentically you, right? You are owning your story. There's strength in that. So he called it emotional transparency.
Yeah.
And I think I really like that too, where it's like owning our emotions, owning our stories, owning this is who I am. But we use the word vulnerable, and I think that's why people find it so scary, because it associates weakness. But it's not weakness.
It can.
Yeah.
And I think for me, when I think about my own journey of vulnerability, I remember one of the very first therapy sessions, my own personal therapy sessions I went into, was like I wanted to be able to be more vulnerable and to express how I was feeling with people. And I remember saying like, but being vulnerable is weak. And through a lot of work, I have recognized like that is a very logical way of viewing vulnerability.
More because it's geared towards men.
Correct.
Right.
And for me now, because I have this a deeper connection between my logic and my emotion brains, and still have a lot of work to do, I don't view vulnerability that same way anymore.
Right.
I view it as being authentic. I view it as being emotionally transparent.
Yeah.
I also view it as like taking risk. And I will be very honest, like at times with certain people, being vulnerable has been high risk for me. And I have not always been received well or received with open arms and belief. And through my therapeutic work, I've really come to this realization that being vulnerable is also an opportunity to seek clarity.
Right. I think that's what those babes in business groups do as well. It was shocking in a powerful way for me to see all these women of some pretty, like, in my opinion, successful, renowned businesses here locally in St. Louis, just how normal they are.
Yeah.
And the podcast does that too, I think. When I start having these conversations with people, I'm like, wait, you're just like me.
Yeah.
You're just a human being trying your best, and you still have doubts and fears and worries like everyone else. But I think when we look at the highlight reels on Instagram, we put people up on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Right?
But like that's not real.
No, it's not.
That's like social media is a wonderful tool. It is a glimpse into people.
Yeah.
It is not who people are.
Oh no.
And we show the best of ourselves on social media.
Yeah,
Most of us. I think some of us do a good job of trying to find a balance
Right.
of both.
But if we're being real, I think social media is an example of a platform that people go to escape whatever it is, right?
Absolutely.
And so let's say, for example, you have an influencer who's a lifestyle influencer. You love watching the new stuff. You learn so many cool tricks on, this is a good brand. This is how I clean my house. This is the workouts that I do. Here's what I cook, right? And like they're all positive and you really love their energy and their vibe and it gives you like something to attain, right?
Yeah.
one day they open up and they cry. And you'll be like, wow, they're human. They're just like me. And it makes you feel more connected. However.
Yes, the comment section.
But I wasn't even going to go in that direction. I was going to say, if that influencer is in a dark place, and then it continues that all of their posts are them crying and being negative, and then their brand, if you will, has changed, I don't think I would feel the same about them where I'm like, oh, they opened up, they're going through something hard. Instead, I would look at them and be like, I feel for you. But I'm also going through this dark stuff. I don't need to see it to so much extreme. Like, you opening up once, fabulous. But if that's all I'm seeing, and I think that's true of anyone, if we're being honest, like,
I appreciate that in people.
Yeah. All the time though?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean,
Really?
I think that is, life is hard.
It is.
And I think we do ourselves a disservice by acting like it's not. Because it creates isolation. It furthers this feeling of loneliness. And in my own experience, I have been guilty of that.
Yeah.
Where I will disappear for periods of time, especially like on social media.
Yeah.
And there's like times and places to share certain things. And also you never know who might resonate with what you're going through. And what an opportunity to connect. And yes, you don't want to see somebody all the time doom and gloom, but that might be their reality for periods of time.
Yeah.
And I think when we are not willing or feel uncomfortable with that, that says a lot more about us than it does them. And I've had to figure that out personally.
Yeah.
Because I've been in that space of like, oh, I don't want to see this like person crying on the internet all the time. And then I had to like be like, why is that? Like, why does that make me so uncomfortable? And a lot of times it was because I was also feeling those feelings.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
Yeah. And it was like, oh, well, there's something there I need to explore then. Or I don't, and I just keep flipping on the algorithm, right?
Right.
And it's a double-edged sword, right? Like if you're in a space of where you're wanting to do that exploration, you might lean into folks that are going through maybe similar things to you. Or you might need that escapism.
Right.
Which is like you want to see the opposite.
Yeah.
And again, no right or wrong. It's based on what you need.
Yeah. And I really appreciate you saying like you need.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes helpful family members or friends will try to tell you what you need or don't need.
Yes, they will.
A personal example that I'll share. So I'm single and I'm a lover girl. I have been since I was 3 years old. I just love love. And I'm a connoisseur of love stories. I just love to hear how people meet because every story is so different.
Yeah.
And my favorite thing actually, if I'm being honest about the love story, is seeing the person's face lights up. If they're together, seeing how they look at each other, tell the story together. Like, it's so beautiful to me. But I love romance novels and I love romance Hallmark type movies, right? And my mom or people in my life will be like, you gotta stop watching this stuff. Like it's giving you too many like fluffy ideas. And I've always felt so resentful of that because it's like, don't insult my intelligence that I can't separate fantasy from reality. I'm not saying this is my expectation, but if my reality is that I haven't found love yet, I need to be reminded that it exists.
Yeah.
And I know life isn't a Hallmark movie even when you find love all the time, but there definitely should be Hallmark moments if you found the person that you found.
There's glimmers.
Yeah.
I believe that.
There should be.
And I've experienced that.
Yeah.
So it's like, I know that is a thing.
Right. It's not all day, every day. Of course, we're human beings.
Yeah.
But there are really special times and there is that love. And I think it's, for me, I like to be reminded of that, you know?
Yeah. I think that's a great example.
Yeah.
Of surrounding yourself with what either you want or what you're currently in and figuring out what you need individually.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be somebody that's going to tell you what you need.
Always.
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 Or what you should do,
Mm-hmm.
or how you should feel.
Mm-hmm.
And
That was a fun one that I had with a cousin of mine. So in the Jewish world, we get married really young. And I'm 28, which is still super young, but in the Jewish world, I'm practically expired. If I'm being honest. If I still want to like a Jewish guy, at least an Orthodox one, which I don't, so that actually aligns. But my cousin, this past Passover, we were eating there, and it's like, what's really cool about the Jewish religion is that our holidays, we believe, have certain energies that you can tap into for prayer or for manifesting, right? So Passover is just a time of like really connecting to God and like calling out from the depths of your soul, whatever your desires are, and you'll be answered.
Yeah.
And so they're like cry out to God for like a husband. And I was just like, but here's the thing. I believe in divine timing and it'll happen exactly when it's supposed to. And in the Jewish world, I'll say it in Hebrew first, there's something they call the shidduch crisis, which literally, shidduch is just like a match. And it's usually around older single girls, is what they say. That there's a crisis of there's a lot of fabulous women who are still single. And they're killing it in looks and career and just everything else. They just haven't found a husband yet. And I looked at my cousin and I said, I don't believe that there is a shidduch crisis. I believe that there is an emunah crisis. And emunah means faith. I think there's a faith crisis. The problem is all expectations are somewhat unrealistic. And there's this expectation that you're going to get married at 18 or 19, 20. And if that works for some people, fabulous. But if it doesn't, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong. What if you're supposed to meet your person at 35? What are you going to do? Cry away all your 20s and early 30s?
Or I think sometimes you like meet somebody at one period of time in your life and it doesn't work out, and sometimes later in life it comes back.
It could.
You know, I think anything is possible.
Literally.
I mean,
life is long.
it is for most of us.
Right.
And I think that is, to remain open is important. However it looks, you know, whether that's like remaining open in love or within faith. There's so many things that we can be closed off to. And I've struggled with that myself.
Yeah.
You know, I'm older than you and I'm also single. And, you know, I desire a partner.
I love how you said desire and not want.
Yeah.
That was the other word, by the way.
Yeah.
Where instead of saying want because it creates lack and scarcity, you say desire because it's going to happen for you. It's just a matter of it being in aligned timing.
Yes, and I believe that.
Yeah.
And I think that there are challenges, you know, within all of that. But it's something I desire. I don't say want and I don't say need because I'm surviving and thriving and doing the things without.
Yeah.
But I desire.
It would enhance.
It would enhance, It would enhance my life in a way.
What a powerful place to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, there it can be mixed emotions, right, within it. Especially when you've experienced love and you've lost love.
Yeah.
And
oof, that hurts, doesn't it?
yeah, it does. It definitely does. But I also believe that what is meant for you will find you. Whether that's past, present, or future.
And I will say, going back to Kabbalah for a moment, there's so many levels of soulmates.
Yes.
There's the romantic partner soulmates, but there's business partner soulmates, friendship soulmates, pet soulmates.
Yes, there are.
There are, no, really, and I love it, and it makes so much sense to me. And like, even just our friendship, right? We aligned so much right here, right now. If I would have met you even a year ago, we would not have connected.
Probably not. Because that's divine timing.
It's divine timing. And I think about that in terms of, that's what gives me comfort with romantic relationships. Because just everything that's come about in my life, this is what I love about, as I get older, I could start to see patterns. I could start to see how things, you know, when you're 18, 19, you don't have enough life experience to have anything to reference. As I get older, I can look back and see how things had to be in alignment, how things had to happen at certain times. Things that seem terrible, like losing a job, set me on this track where I'm sitting here with you, and that wouldn't have happened. And back to you as well. Like, I think it's so powerful that you have that moment where, like, you could have looked more into doing the traditional job that you've been doing, just found a new boss, a new company to work for, or take a leap into the unknown.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you know, I had been reached out to be in roles, and then I also was out seeking roles, and they weren't happening.
Yes.
And I realized that's purposeful.
Yes.
Whether it's because God and the universe are aligning it that way through me, because there were things that were offered and I was like, no. And I needed a job. Desperately. Let me be very clear.
Yeah.
And I wasn't willing to sacrifice myself to just have a job.
Right.
I didn't want to just have a job. I wanted to build something that had meaning and purpose for me.
Right.
Because I know that's what's going to get me to where I want to go, which is a space where, you know, I have a community, I have soulmate partnerships with, you know, a romantic partner, with friendships, with business. Like, I wanted that.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, I had to say no to things, or I had to be willing to sit with that I also received no. And that's hard.
Yeah.
Especially from a job perspective, there was so much of my identity tied to the work I did in the nonprofit sector in particular. And I was very qualified to do a lot of the jobs that I was like applying for that I wasn't getting.
Yeah. Same.
And it was like, there is a reason that that's happening. And of course there's a reason, I know that now.
Right.
But it was painful.
And scary.
And very scary.
When you have bills to pay.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I'm trying. It's not like I'm not trying.
Yeah.
I think on the entrepreneur journey, there's a lot of ways you can go about it, right? Like, you can work a 9 to 5 and work on your stuff on the weekends or the evenings. You can save up money. You know what's been really validating for me? I got no savings.
Girl, I've been there.
I'm a real low kind of girl.
Yeah.
It's a problem between me wanting to be logical and wanting to be a financially responsible adult, and then also being like, but if I'm meant to have it, God will give it to me.
Yes, girl.
And the problem is he has.
Yeah, same. And there are challenges with that too, right? It's like sometimes it's really flowing and sometimes it's not.
It's not.
And I don't know, I'm a person that, for some people, that doesn't work for them.
No, they can't. It would literally drive them. And that's the thing. So in Judaism, we believe that, like, there was the original sin of Adam, right?
Right.
And then once...
We share that in Catholicism.
Perfect. Stick with me for one moment. This is where it gets a little different, I think. Well, maybe not. Maybe this is all online, but whatever. Just stick with me. Flow with me.
I got you, girl.
So it's like, when Adam left the Garden of Eden, right? At that point, now he had to work by the sweat of his brow. And it wasn't just that manifestation flow of him getting it, right? It wasn't just like, I believe it there, ergo I shall receive. But I learned in high school, which I thought this was so profound, which is that you have two options. The more faith you have, the less hard you have to work, because things are in alignment, things flow to you. And the less you have faith, the harder you will have to work. That is kind of the way the world is. It does have both in it. So people who are hard workers, who are not in alignment, will never understand the flow. And people who are in the flow state are like, why would you work so hard? Like, you can get everything you want anyways. And there are times when I haven't been in alignment, and then that's when it's hard financially. But then it works out. It just does.
You shift, you meet the right people, you do the things necessary to get where you're going. And I think, you know, I call that living in the Delulu.
I love living in the Delulu.
And I know that's a really hard concept for a lot of people. And there have been times where it's challenging for me too. But I know when I live in a space that I have faith that everything will work out for me.
It does.
It does.
Always.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that it's perfect.
No, that's really important to touch on, actually.
Yeah.
Because living in the delulu and believing that life is working for you doesn't mean that you live in this magical pink fairyland.
No. No, not at all.
It just means that when hard things happen to you, you're like, I don't see how, but going back to my Kabbalah roots here for a moment, I have certainty beyond logic.
Yeah.
Because logically, the math ain't mathin'.
Correct.
But I have certainty beyond logic, and I have this inner knowing because I've seen it before, plus I'm just trusting my gut that everything's working out for me and my higher purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a yin to the yang, so if something bad happens, something equally massively good must be coming my way.
Yeah.
It has to.
Yeah.
And that has gotten me through so many dark times.
Right. And I also recognize like that, being in this space, there is a sense of privilege that comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're in that mentality, not everybody's life is like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody's experience is like that. And there's a lot of reasons for that if you break it down. But for me personally, I have found if I just do what I know I am meant to do,
Mm-hmm.
and I live in a way that has this belief that either things will work out for me or I will do the things to make it work out for me, it happens.
Mm-hmm. You just have to let go of maybe your timelines.
Yeah.
That's
a big piece.
The timeline thing is really what gets you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that passive manifester thing is really big as well.
Mm.
Which type of manifester were you? Do you remember?
I'm like not descript. So I can do any.
Oh, so you could flow into any sort of manifestation. That's cool.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's also like I don't need just like a vision board, for example. I do them.
Yeah.
Because I think, I've have conflicting feelings about them personally, like for myself. But it's something I do engage in mostly because I like the aesthetic of them. And it's just something that like to look at.
Yeah.
I don't get stuck in them though.
Yeah.
Where I think like previously, before I really understood that about myself, I would really get stuck in a vision board.
Mm.
Like, why isn't this happening? What isn't working for me? I would get really honed in on the things versus like the feeling.
Right. Well, that's actually what I learned from my human design.
Mm-hmm.
It said if I do a vision board, I should not do specific images like, oh, I want my husband to look like this. This is my dream job, things like that. It was like, you should focus on the feelings.
Yep.
And if you are going to do a vision board, it should be more like colors and like things that evoke those emotions in you. I thought that was really fascinating.
It is interesting. Yeah, so I think we're all complex individuals.
Mm-hmm.
We all have different needs and desires. And
lean in.
We have to lean in.
I love that, by the way. I've been quoting it and feeling it pretty much on the daily since we talked about it initially.
Good.
It's just, feelings are hard.
They are. And they're also wonderful too.
They are.
They're complex, just like us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, creating that space to lean into them. And I also really get a lot of joy creating those spaces for others. And I know you do too.
Yeah, I definitely do. I just love to watch other people connect or make a connection non-verbally too.
Yeah.
That can happen, especially in some of the environments that I am creating, is somebody could speak up and say something and it's interesting to watch other people like an eyebrow raise or a body shift.
Mm.
And it's like, I know what that means. Like it is resonating or there's discomfort.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity to lean in.
Right. So Kabbalah talked about this, and this helped me with a lot of these events that we go to. Mm-hmm. There's the circle where you go around, you introduce yourself, you talk about you, right? And it's interesting because like as we are to go to more of these circles, a lot of these people are repeat people. They know us, they know our story. So I just kind of have fun with whatever energy I'm feeling that day. I'm like, what do I want to share? And what feels like the vibe. But in any social setting that you're going to, if you want to really gain the most, David talks about how it's all about like adding value, not trying to take value and take energy. And so like I stopped when I go to these events looking around when I'm talking, looking around to see how I'm being received. Instead, I just like put whatever I want to put out there, and then I lean back and just let it fall where it needs to fall. And your people will find you. The people who resonated will come to me. And if someone didn't resonate, then they don't connect with me. And then they don't come by afterwards, and I wouldn't know the difference either. So
I think it also is an opportunity for like reciprocity to be created, and for this feeling of connection in a mutual way that doesn't always exist when you're trying to say the right thing to the right person in the room.
Oof, you just touched something for me. Because I had that conversation with someone recently about that, how we're very privileged to be in a spot right now where we get to be authentically ourselves. And our businesses, our relationships, our personal lives all revolve around that. It's been hard to get here. There's still going to be challenges, but overall, love. But there are people out there whose whole identity, whether it's their business, their personal, or everything above, is all about public perception. What's my reputation? What are people thinking about me? Maybe I want to join this group. Maybe I want to be on this podcast. But is it going to add value to me? How are people going to perceive me? Back to our earlier conversation. And I feel so sad for people like that, because you are quite literally a slave to the public.
The need to feel
validated,
popular.
Oh, I can tell you a funny story. When I was in high school, I was popular, but not popular, if you know what I mean. Like I was popular just because I liked everybody and I chit-chatted and I just like flowed, but I wasn't like the cool girl popular. There was a cool girl group. They by accident added me to their group chat.
I think that was purposeful.
No, it was not. They had no idea. I was on it for about a week and no one knew.
That's hysterical.
And I just was watching. It was very entertaining, but then it got old after a while because just they were so rude to each other. And just putting each other down. It wasn't fun. Like I got a sneak peek into the life, and it was not something I wanted to be a part of. And then a week in, I texted them like, "Hey guys, just so you know, I've been on this chat for a week."
That's so funny.
And then they're like, "Oh my god, we're so sorry," and they like took me off it.
You got an inside glimpse.
And I wasn't missing a thing.
You're usually not.
Nope.
Not with.
But it was confirmed.
And that's a hard thing, I think, there is this innate human thing where we need attention or validation or affirmation. I think it's when it consumes you is when it becomes problematic.
Or if it stops you from doing something you really want to do or are intrigued by.
Or actually being you.
Because
I know people in my own life that I think get consumed by the number of followers or the view numbers that they have on their videos. Because that's what feeds whatever it is within them.
Right. So I will say it is hard not to get caught up in that. Because I've definitely myself certain views, like whatever. But at the same time, I think goes all back to like not only your people will find you, but like whoever needs to see it will find it. And so if you're doing something that you really believe adds value, as hard as it is to not get distracted by the algorithm and the metrics, you gotta like shift your focus on why am I doing this? Like what is my why?
Well, it's the intention behind it all.
Yes.
And I think that's the part that I think is
you can lose that so fast.
Oh, and I've seen it.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to watch how people can shift and change and feel like,
maybe it's the real self coming through though.
yeah.
You know, like, I think it was Steve Harvey who said this, that money doesn't change you
Mhm.
like everyone thinks it
Yeah.
does. It just gives you permission to be who you always were.
Yep. And I think sometimes like a following can do that for people.
Mm.
Not that like followings are bad for everybody. Some people that I know have huge followings and are who they have always been.
Right.
But I think when the intention behind the follow is like, I have to connect with this person because they're going to give me something more.
Mm.
That's usually when I'm like, ooh.
Yep.
This is not in alignment with me.
Right.
Because although I want to reach a large audience myself, right?
Right. You want to do it?
I want to do impact. I also, that is not my driving force.
Right.
Like that is not what is going to fill my cup.
Right. I mean, there's two ways that will happen.
Yeah.
Right? Either just time, consistency, putting yourself out there, you see those numbers
Mhm.
growing, you know, or one day you have a viral moment.
Yeah.
Of some video that you probably didn't even put that much effort into,
Yeah.
and it just blows up,
Yeah.
and you'll never know. And I will tell you, it is not what you think.
Yeah.
Because, not that I've blown up by any means, but even in terms of views,
Mhm.
I've had people who have large followings come on my podcast.
Yeah.
They are the least viewed episodes.
Mm.
I have one of my friends in particular who I'm thinking of has no following.
Mhm.
Did not collaborate with me on any of the reels. Didn't even share it with anyone. She didn't even watch it, I think, for the first 5 months because she was freaked out to see herself on camera. One of my most viewed episodes.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting how that happens, isn't it?
It makes so much sense to me.
Me
I
too.
think it validates what we were talking about the energy thing. I'm still going to interview everybody, whether
Yeah.
they're famous or not. Like, it's just more about I love getting to know people and sharing their stories. you
And
know?
there's nothing wrong with like having a large following and doing I think it's when you start losing who you are
Yeah.
and it becomes this like everything's a tactic.
Right. And I think maybe that's the beauty in slow beginnings.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you get the chance to figure out who you are
Yeah.
before the fame and the following hits
Yeah.
you, right?
Yeah.
Because once it hits you, if you don't know who you are, you're going to be lost.
It's going to be way harder to find yourself.
Right.
Because it's already hard to find yourself outside of like public consumption.
Yeah.
And to do that with that added large, I think sometimes barrier, it can really be, I would imagine, challenging.
Oh, yeah. Think so.
I think so too.
But we're going to have fun along the way.
Yes, absolutely. That's always the big thing is I
Regardless.
only want to do things that are
Fun.
fun or feel like there's meaning.
Yeah. Not to obsess over babes in business, but
Yes.
I just love that group
Yeah,
so
me
much.
too.
I was like, Steph is really creating something so extraordinary
Mm-hmm.
because the warmth of that first event that I went to, and then the second event was no different. And what was so intriguing to me was the second event, I'm coming back as like a second timer, and already I'm feeling a deep connection with these women, and it's like old friends, and this is just the second time that we've seen each other. And now that we're going to these different events where like we're all trying to, you know, support or collaborate, it's so, I love it. Because as women, we talked about this, I think off camera,
Mhm.
how it's so natural for us to be competitive.
Yes.
I think that's like our natural instinct.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's something like I personally, there have been times in my life where I have absolutely been competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that, you know, along this journey of starting my business, doing a lot more deep personal work, I realize it is not something that I want
Yeah.
within my life.
It's not good energy.
You know, I think there is healthy competition and that piece, but I also
Yeah.
think there is toxic.
It's a slippery slope.
Yes. And I have been guilty
Yeah.
of that. I own that. there are relationships, I'm looking at the camera literally, like there might be somebody watching this video and might know a past version of me, and I absolutely was probably competitive, and for that I can take accountability. And Angela today is very different.
That's awesome.
Because I think the thing that is important when you are wanting to do some of that like introspective work is being able to see like where you fumble.
Yeah.
And I know for me, competition is something that is just, it gives me the ick.
It does. And doing some inner work for me, whenever I feel like I'm being competitive, it's usually coming from low self-esteem.
Yes.
For me.
Same girl.
And it's like something in me feels like I'm not enough.
Yeah.
Because when I'm collaborative, it's when I feel like I'm good. I feel so much joy about whatever area I'm in.
Yes.
I want you to feel the same. Like I'm gonna gas you up. I'm gonna like boost you. I'm gonna share your stuff with other people, right?
Yes.
Because it's no competition.
Yeah.
If it's an area that I feel insecure in, that's when I get competitive. That's when I get jealous.
Yes.
And it can easily eat away at you. And like Kabbalah was the first place that I learned the jealousy, like the positivity of it, where it's like being jealous isn't necessarily a bad thing. It all depends with what are you doing with that energy.
Yeah. It's the intention.
Right. And how fast can you get out of that dark space? Because if it's eating at you, no bueno.
Yeah.
But if it's like, oh, this person has a podcast.
Yeah.
I want a podcast.
Yeah.
How can I do it? That's beautiful. That's jealousy that's used for good.
Of course.
In a sense.
Yeah.
If you even want to define that as jealousy.
Yeah.
But you know.
I view that as like inspiration.
Right.
And
but initially you may feel a place of lack is what I'm saying. In terms of like, yeah, you're inspired, but you're like, God, like, what do they have that I don't? Why can't I do this? But if you use that and you reverse engineer it and really look within instead of projecting it out onto them, I think that's when you grow.
Yeah, I think also being able to step back and assess like for competition and comparison, you know, have you shifted and changed? Like if somebody has shown up for you and been supportive of you and now they're in their space where they're doing well, are you showing up for them? And if the answer is no, that might be something to look at. And then for the person that's like on the receiving end of that, it might be an opportunity to assess, like, is this relationship one in which I want to be in?
So a big thing that a friend of mine just told me that his therapist told him, that I thought was awesome, which was, he's going to be a future guest, so hopefully we'll talk about this like more in depth.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about it since our conversation, and it's actually really changed a lot of decisions for me, which is I am a dreamer and I am positive a lot. And so there'll be times when maybe I'll project the potential without really looking at what is this relationship in front of me right now, whether it's romantic or business or friendship, whatever, right? And then it's more about, am I happy? Yeah. It's a simple question. Are you happy? And then, can you do something about it or not?
Right. Yeah, it's so complex.
One fun thing before we wrap up that I would love to bring up too is, so I'm currently a barista.
Yes.
And you shared that you were a barista.
I was.
I love that. So can you share a little bit about your experience?
Yeah. I was a barista. I was in high school for a little local coffee shop. It was one of those like standalone in a parking lot.
Yeah.
Like coffee shops. And it was like the first one that was in St. Louis.
Oh, cool.
And I worked there for a couple of years and they have since closed. But it was such a fun experience. It's something that I still look back on really fondly because I look at like that experience as part of where I think I started learning to love talking to people and hearing their stories. And there is nothing that brings me more joy than story sharing. And through that experience, being able to just like be a little blip in somebody's day is a gift, even if it's not like the best interaction.
Yeah.
Because as humans, like, interaction is really important.
And they can grow.
And they can grow. And anything can come from that. And, I learned a lot about myself in that job because I worked a lot alone. And it was during a really interesting, challenging part of my life. And I often wonder, like, oh, if Angela today were to do that, what would that look like?
Oh, yeah.
Because I've changed so much, I'm not 16 anymore, for one. And two, it's so much life has happened. But it is something that I really enjoyed. And coffee is also like huge for me. Like I'm a big coffee drinker.
Absolutely.
And I love the environment of coffee shops and the community that can be created within them. And it's something that I really gravitate towards.
Yeah.
And so it's a very unique experience being a barista.
Yeah, it is.
And
I love it.
Yeah, what you can give to someone in a day and what then you get in return too. It's again that energy exchange, if you will.
It fuels my soul in a way that I just don't know how to explain to anyone who hasn't been a barista. Some people hate the food service industry.
Yeah.
But I'm not super introverted, so I love it. Even though I do love making coffee too, I tend, because where I work, there's two of us.
Yeah.
So I tend to be the one who is designated to be the cashier girl.
Okay. That makes sense.
I get better tips.
Yeah, I used to get pretty good tips myself.
I love it, and I use it as practice, and it's like a social experiment for me too. But I view it as like speed dating.
Yeah.
Like 2 to 3 minutes with each customer. How can I get the most out of that interaction with them? And I've been reading books on conversations because unlike you, I prefer deep, meaningful conversations. When I have 2 to 3 minutes with a person, we are not getting into a deep, meaningful conversation unless for whatever reason they stay around for a little bit longer.
Right.
Did I get into a whole conversation about men's dress pants the other day? Sure did. Sure did. And it was fascinating.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I'm learning, conversation's an art and it's a skill. And so learning to be able to just create rapport with someone without getting deep was a skill that I didn't have. And so that's been really fun for me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a unique experience.
The secret? Those intrusive thoughts that you have, let them out.
Yes.
If you like someone's pants,
Yep.
if you like something they're wearing, if there's something different, or if they seem snazzy, say it.
Yeah. There's such value in giving somebody a compliment.
Yeah.
And
totally.
It feels good to both the person on the receiving end and also the person that is giving it.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in complimenting people, and sometimes it's on what they wear or how they
or their energy.
I'm big on
I've been doing that recently. There was 2 girls yesterday where I'm like, I just love your energy.
Yeah, because I think it really gives somebody a chance in their day to know that somebody sees them.
Can you imagine? I was just thinking about it. It's no big deal for me to say it. I see it and I say it.
Yeah.
But can you imagine? I'm thinking about if roles were reversed and I was getting coffee and someone said that to me, I would be thinking about that probably for years. For years.
Yeah. That's oftentimes the compliment I receive from people is about my energy.
Yeah.
And
you are magnetic in a way that I've never seen before.
Thank you.
Truly.
It is something that is really meaningful to me. Because I think it feels to me, a testament to the work I have done.
Yeah.
And it has been hard.
Yeah.
It has been really challenging, and I have had a lot of pain that has come with being my most authentic self. And to know that the energy I am giving off to people feels authentic, feels real, because it is the most impactful compliment to me. It is something that I always am striving for. I want interactions with people, for them to walk away and know she is who she is. She saw me. She created a space for me, because that is something I haven't always received.
you also elevate the spaces that you're in.
Thank you.
No, truly. Like,
Thank
I'm
you.
thinking about some of the events. Like, for example, a really cool event that we did together was the cold plunge,
Yeah.
which I had never done before. It was like breath work, cold plunge, and then the sauna. Like, if you hadn't been there, I'm sure it still would have been such a great experience.
Would have been great.
But you being there was such an elevated experience for me.
Oh,
It really was.
thank you.
Yeah.
That's really nice. And it was great. I mean, it was such a shared experience for me too.
Yeah.
I mean, I had done something similar like that before, not like in this back to back like that. So I kind of knew a little bit about what to expect, but it is nice when you are in a space and there is just this unspoken energetic support.
Yeah. That was a phenomenal, they really curated an energy, right?
Mhm.
Because like everyone there was so supportive of each other.
Yeah.
Like when we were back for round 2 and everyone was in the sauna and they were like cheering us
Yeah.
on, like most of these people were strangers.
Right.
That
All
was-
of them were strangers,
All
really.
of them were strangers. I forget because I've connected with a few of
Yeah,
them
same.
since. So it's like, oh wait, we're not strangers anymore. But like it's been a lot of fun.
And it's like if you lean into that, amazing things can happen.
It's been extraordinary.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really have to thank Samantha Lander for this
Yes.
because I mean this podcast was the catalyst for
Mhm.
connection in general, but it was in the beginning it was just people in my circle.
Yeah.
It wasn't really expanding past, it was just me trying to convince everyone in my life to come on and
Yeah.
have a video with deep, meaningful conversations, which is scary.
Of course.
But Samantha was the first person to ever reach out to me. And she really was a trailblazer because since then others have, but she was the first and I will always remember that. And like, we didn't pick off right off the bat. It got lost in the DMs and like, we were supposed to do it and then neither one of us answered and then it just kind of fell through. But then I had another guest recently on who sparked her memory. She came on and like through Samantha, like I started following her. I saw her because she's a big supporter of like local.
Huge.
And so like I know about things in St. Louis because I follow her page and I
Yeah.
look through the stories. I'm like, what's happening in St. Louis?
Yeah.
You know? And that's how I found out Babes in Business. I DM'd Steph and asked her if she had anyone doing the coffee. She's like, you want it? I was like, oh, yeah, I want it.
Yeah.
And like that's how I'm here. And it's all because of Samantha. She like opened up this whole door for me. Just because she's not afraid to put herself out there.
Yeah. Yes, she has a very unique ability to just put herself out there.
She's unafraid is
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
She has zero fear and zero fucks.
Yes. And I love that about
I
her.
love it too.
Yeah.
I told her, I'm like, you got chutzpah. And
Yeah.
I mean that in the best way possible.
Yeah.
Like it's something to look up to. And it's like, some people may look at it and be like, oh, well, should you, shouldn't you? Like, but look at all the opportunities that she has. Look at how successful she has been and how she will become. And it's because she's unafraid.
Yes.
And she's a perfect example as well of not letting other people's opinion
Yes.
stop you. Like on social media, she's the most real person out
Yeah.
there. She is the silliest reels and she
Mhm.
doesn't care. And she's putting meaningful, valuable information
Yeah.
and work out there.
Yeah.
I love following her. She's
Yes. Yeah, she
I'm a
is
big
great.
fan.
Yeah.
great. Big fan.
Yes.
Okay. I have this tradition.
Okay.
So this whole podcast, and this is very much in alignment with you as well,
Mhm.
is based on this Hebrew quote, which is Asa Chacham, Halamim Mikol Adam, which means one who is wise is one who learns from everyone. And we've learned a lot from you. But if you can leave us with just one last life lesson or quotable quotes.
Ooh. You know, I'm a big believer in quotes. So like there's always so many circulating for me.
Totally.
There's kind of two that always stick with me. There's three, but I can't remember the third like verbatim, so I don't want to mess that up. But there's a quote, Dolly Parton,
Yes.
and I did a post about this recently, but it's find out who you are and do it on purpose.
So powerful.
And the other is a quote actually that Michelangelo said. It's an Italian phrase, ancora imparo, which means I'm always learning.
Yeah.
And I think those are two ways that have really resonated with me personally, you know, figuring out who I am and doing it on purpose and having the understanding that I'm always going to be learning. And there's also a great Maya Angelou quote that I absolutely love, and I just cannot remember it verbatim right now.
It's a paraphrase.
But it's something along the lines of like living your life and with purpose and compassion and style.
Yeah.
And I
know what
I'm talking about.
about.
I'm blanking right now, and it's one that I often quote, and I don't know why I'm blanking right now, which is
You
interesting.
also did a post on it as well.
I haven't, but
You haven't?
I am planning to.
Oh, weird that I said that.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that is, as I have figured out doing,
Maybe you quoted it on your podcast.
maybe
Maybe that's
That
what I'm
probably
thinking
is.
of.
Yeah, that's
I'm
probably
like,
it.
there's definitely you and this quote that are
Yes.
aligned for me, so that's what I'm thinking
it's.
of.
I think it's on my podcast now that you say that.
Yeah.
I've been 6 months removed from my podcast, so I have to refresh myself.
Yeah.
But one of the things I have learned about myself through the process of figuring out who I am and doing it on purpose is like being intentional about living with compassion and empathy and styling it. I think people often talk about like how I dress and how I carry myself and my energy, and
Yes.
that is crafted, like it is intentional, and I don't mean like intentional from the perspective of placing things in boxes for myself, but I wake up every day and I'm like, how am I feeling today?
Yeah.
And then from there I assess like, what does that mean for how I present to the world? Like how I dress and like what I want to bring into spaces. Because there are sometimes where I really want to bring the fun. Like I wore cheetah pants today.
I love it.
Because I'm like, I want to bring fun into the space. I wore a bright purple sweater. Like that was intentional because I want to feel colorful and I want to feel aligned with myself. And there are times where I'm like, I'm going to wear like.
I'm just following those feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I align with that too because it's almost Valentine's Day, so
Yeah.
like everyone's doing reds and pinks, right? And so I just got my nails done and I got black.
Yes.
I just was feeling it. My nail girl was like, "Why?" I was like, "I don't know. I just had this vision, and I'm trusting my gut, and it just felt right to me, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah.
So I just went with the flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
So that is something that I try to really put out into the ethers.
I just remembered there was one more thing that we didn't mention in the beginning, which was another thing you're working on, if I remember correctly from the podcast that I just heard you. Is it a book?
It is a book.
Okay.
Yes. So it's interesting because I started writing a book last year. It was more just about my life and things of that sort. And I placed a pause on it.
Okay.
This is a theme for me. Like I do place pauses on things because I believe in divine timing.
Right.
And kind of based on some things that have happened just in my life in the last year, I started a whole other book.
How?
And eventually I'm going to go back to the original book and do more within that. But I'm writing a book particularly just around some of like the experiences I've had within relationships and my role in those and how I've grown in that space and common themes that I think exist for many people and how to navigate that.
Yeah.
So, I obviously am not sharing so much about it yet.
It sounds very similar to the writing style of the self-love experiment.
Correct. It is.
So when you're saying this, I'm like, I feel what you're putting out there, and I think knowing you and how you share your stories, I think it's your voice too. It's going to be really powerful, and you've got a sexy voice. I really agree. So like, you should do an audiobook after.
Yeah, I really want that.
That would be so great. I'm very excited for you. And when I heard last night, I was listening to the podcast last night.
That was the first time I've talked about it.
Yeah,
publicly.
That was the first time I had heard about it.
Yes.
And I was so excited for you. And I'm very intrigued as well because I also want to write a book. I already have the title.
Yep.
I need to live a little more life.
Do you?
Yes. Because there's certain things, I'll tell you about it after, that I want to write about.
Yeah.
And I'm going to experience them, but I've yet to experience them. I know it's not about love and romance. It's other stuff. look at other stuff.
Yeah.
And some of them are planned.
Yeah.
And they're happening even this year.
Yeah.
But that's going to be such a spiritual journey that like, and unique that most people aren't going to get to experience that I want to write about it.
Yeah.
So I need to experience it first.
Yeah.
But I'm very curious to know about like, not just the writing process, but like your publishing process as well. Because one of my favorite podcasters is just published a book, but it's not live yet. Like they're doing pre-orders. And when she first wanted to publish a book, publishers nowadays, I guess, are different. And the one she went through, they told her, unless you have 100,000 followers on a social platform, we're not even going to look at your book. So that's another thing. Like, I could maybe write the book, but until talking back to numbers, that's an example of there are certain things that I want to accomplish where I do need those numbers to do what I need to do.
Yeah. I've said forget the numbers. For me.
Really?
Yeah.
You're just going to go for publishing it and believe that if it's meant to be out into the world, the opportunities. You're so right.
Because for me, it's about I want to get out for myself and for other people that potentially it might resonate with.
You know,
and maybe that's 5 people, or maybe it's 500,000 people. I don't know.
You know what you should do? I just thought of it. See, this is why you thought I was a manifesting generator.
Yeah.
I like to 10x people's dreams.
Yeah.
But you could self-publish books on Amazon.
That's the plan.
Okay.
Yes.
Yay.
Yeah, it is. That is the plan.
That's so
and
great.
I'm in process of writing right now, which has been a really interesting process. It's been, you know, there's some pain that's attached with the topic I'm writing about, and it came out of actual pain.
Wow.
And like, it's been an opportunity for me to take some accountability.
Wow.
Because it came out of like a negative or maladaptive behavior that I engaged in, and also other people within my life in different ways and how it shows up. And I know this is like very elusive and like very vague in how I'm talking about it. And when the time is right, obviously I will talk about it more publicly.
This is just a taste.
Yeah, but it has been a cathartic process in a lot of ways because it has allowed me to be able to write out some of the work I'm doing internally.
Yeah.
Through therapy, through coaching, through my own self-work. And it's also allowed me to do some reflection around like other people's behaviors and hold empathy and compassion for not just myself, but also the people that were involved in those scenarios. And I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to be able to share it with people because I think it is something many of us engage in and behave because we learned these behaviors, right? Like, for protective factors or for safety, whatever it may be. And I have learned so much about how to work through that and how I continue to work through that and how like I'm going to probably always have to work through that.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes when people think about like, oh, somebody's writing a book, it's like, oh, they have it all figured out.
Yeah, totally.
And it's like, that is not the case.
Right.
For most authors in the space of self-development or self-help, it's
your reflections.
Yeah, it's your reflections.
But it doesn't, it's a practice as well.
Yeah.
So you may have gotten to a good point in it where you figured out the problem, you're working on the solution, you're actively working on it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the work is over.
Right.
It's just begun.
Yeah. But that's life.
Right.
Like we're always evolving and changing and growing and I don't mean always from a perspective like that's, I also believe in like sometimes there's importance in stagnation.
And that's part of it too.
Yes.
Whether you like it or not, there will be times of rest and stagnation.
And I've had to really be comfortable with that. To pause and to reflect and like be within my feelings about things.
Yes. Well, I mean, Kabbalah talks about this too, where everything's an illusion, especially like the people around you. So it's really all of a reflection of you and it's an outer projection of that. So you need to do the work. So I love that like your book talks about like your piece
Yes.
in it.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away that people are autonomous over their actions and
Sure.
they did things that maybe were not correct, right?
Myself included.
Yourself included, right? But I'm saying like, but forgetting yourself for a moment, like others' actions, right?
Yeah.
But then taking the accountability to see, but like, how did my self-worth and my actions, ergo, maybe influence that or make me even tolerate those relationships in my life in the first place, right? Which is really intriguing. I think it's been a great read. I'm excited.
Well, the plan is to get it done by the end of the year and get it out. So
Okay.
I just keep telling myself, I'm like, I need 3 solid days.
Ah,
And I think I can do it.
okay.
And get it all out. I mean, I know that sounds wild to say, like, you only need 3 days. I mean, not like 3 days to write a book, like, but 3 days to finish it. And because I have a lot of
Like notes.
journaling.
Yeah, knowing you, this is more like a collection of what's already been.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's actually how my first book like was started.
Yeah.
Was like, it's a collection of what already is.
Yeah.
But this one has required me to do a little research, and because it's an element of like psychoeducation and my story, much like the self-love experiment or other books along that vein, where there's this immersion of providing people with education, which is like rooted in my education,
Right.
and then also like real life
Stories.
stories,
We learn through stories.
Right.
Yeah.
and then tools.
It's gonna be so great.
So it's kind of like my podcast, but in written form.
Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, this is gonna be so great.
So yeah, it's exciting. It's scary.
Yeah.
It's something that there's a level of emotional transparency that will exist within this that is raw and an element that I think, it'll be interesting to see how it's perceived.
Yeah.
But I'm doing it anyways.
Yeah. Please do. Because there's people who need to hear it.
Yeah, I believe that. And it's been something that it has been on my heart, and it is something I feel called to do.
Yes.
And much like everything else I'm doing, it's in alignment. It's something that it keeps coming up for a reason for me, and I need to lean in and listen.
Yes, you do. Take your own advice.
Yeah.
And my favorite quote is by Zig Ziglar, where he says that if you have an idea for a product or a business and it's not currently in existence, it's your moral obligation to make it a reality.
Yeah.
So if this idea sparked in you to create this book, it's your moral obligation to make it a reality.
Yes.
No pressure.
Yeah. I don't feel pressure, actually.
Good.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that's so interesting about my business in general and how I live my life now is like I really only want to do things that don't feel like pressure.
Yeah, amen to that. Yep, I'm learning. I'm not there 100% yet, but I'm learning.
Yeah. Well, I don't think any of us are there 100% yet.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still that 1% that exists within me that's like, should I do that? And then I have the internal dialogue. Yeah, we're doing it anyways.
This has been so great. I want to link in the bio everything, whether it's for your personal socials or Arcana Collaborative. You'll let me know what exactly you want to share.
Sure.
But just to leave off, what can we do as a community to support you?
Okay. Well, obviously, if you're local, coming to events,
I'll be there.
they are fun. Like they're deep, but they're fun. There's usually laughter involved, which is great. I always have good snacks.
You do.
I'm a big believer in feeding people. Feed them and they will come.
You feed them, but it's also done so aesthetically.
Well, I think part of that too is like cultural for me. Like I'm Italian.
You're Italian, yes.
And so like it is the way I show love.
Yes.
It is something that is really important to me. Like I want things to like look and feel and taste good.
Yeah.
In all aspects of life, right? Not just food.
When you did the human design
Mhm.
test, what was your sense? Was yours taste?
I don't remember. I have to look at that after.
Okay. That will be your homework.
Yes.
Oh wait, I interrupted you. Sorry. So come to the events.
Yeah,
if you're
come to the
local.
events. Follow me
Mhm.
I'm predominantly on Instagram. So my business is Arcana, ARCANA
Mhm.
.collaborative. And then my personal is Angela.Berra. And I do there's some crossover, but there's also like different things that I post in both spaces.
Totally.
And then listen to Lean In and Listen.
Please, it's so good.
Thank you.
So highly recommend.
Thank you. Because I am planning to bring it back soon.
Yes.
I have to get the date on the calendar, but it is happening.
Yeah.
And then I think showing up and supporting communities is really important to me.
Yeah. So
That's how you support me, through supporting like what is local to you.
Yeah.
Obviously I do have a website, so if people are interested in services, I'm available. But the big thing for me is like connecting with other people and being present.
Are you still working on becoming a licensed sex therapist as well?
So I am taking some training
Okay.
around a lot of things right now for therapy, but
Yeah.
sex therapy is one of them.
I would love to have you back on just to talk about that once that's a little bit more established. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
I had an intimacy coach on recently, so.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a really, working with couples is a very fascinating concept.
Yeah.
And I work a lot with individuals, but couples are on my horizon. And part of that is sex therapy.
Yeah.
And so, yes.
I think it makes a lot of sense just because sex is usually often, whether it's good or bad, is a reflection of the relationship in general, emotionally.
Yeah.
So.
And the relationship with yourself.
Yes. So there's a lot of elements to it.
Yes. Yeah, it's, again, complex.
It would be,
we are.
It literally would need to be an episode within itself.
Yeah, multifaceted.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's just so great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming on.
Of course.
This is
Anytime.
so much fun. This is so much fun.
Yeah, I always want to show up and support.
Thank you. Well, this was another fabulous episode. And again, I am such a podcast girly, even though I have my own podcast, but there's so many that I love, but not every day do I recommend them. So for real, Lean In and Listen, definitely you should try. And if you are not already watching this, it's going to be on Spotify and YouTube. But thank you guys so much for listening and watching, and please share with a friend. I hope you guys have a great week. Let's get it. Let's go.